What's up, Staunch Gang, and everyone else watching? Please subscribe. I just wanted to pop in before the video starts to say that this is going to be about the amazing film Lucas and not any surrounding drama. Whether it's true or not, the time has come to celebrate Lucas for the amazing film that it is, and to celebrate Corey Haim for the amazing actor that he was. So, if you're down with that, let's get to it. Hope you guys enjoy. I first saw Lucas when I was very, very young, but it was never really my favorite until I bought it on tape randomly when I was like 11. And, I absolutely fell in love with the movie to say the least. I was a pretty odd kid too, I guess. While being absolutely addicted to movies, I was also pretty keen on outdoor activities. And we were living out in the country at the time, which led to me spending a lot of time alone, like a lot. But my siblings, they were teens at this point, and they were encompassed with their own lives. And my mom was newly single, so she was doing what newly single moms do. And if I was lucky, they rented me a few tapes and just, kind of left me alone. So with all of these elements in play, and with puberty involved and whatnot, it was a very strange time to rediscover this film. And the tale of a hopelessly romantic young Lucas, and basically how he falls in love for the first time against all odds at every turn. Well, for some reason I highly related to it, and the film has remained a personal favorite of mine ever since. It's easily in my top 5, and I do consider it to be one of the saddest movies ever made. Seriously, I cannot watch this movie without crying, or at the very least reminiscing heavily about the past. Past good times, bad times, past times that probably should never have happened, and past times that never did happen. Real heavy elements, man, and it's just done so real here, especially for a quote unquote teen film. I mean, the opening scene alone really tugs at your heartstrings, and you get the Lucas is just kind of doing his thing. He's with his net, and he's under the bridge, he's hanging out. You really get a good sense of who he is here, and you get the amazing theme from Dave Grusson, which just makes me want to cry every time. Ironically, he's the same dude that scored The Goonies. So as somber as it all is in the start of the film, it's very beautiful as well, but it's just like a real quiet affair. But for some reason, when I see it, it feels like the start of a roller coaster. Lucas is essentially a loner, but he's not without friends. His buddy Ben, the AV Club nerd, is basically in the whole movie, and there's some cool, like, handheld, shot on video stuff here. And there's also the lovelorn Rena, played by Winona Ryder in her film debut, who wants nothing more than Lucas's affection. It's really cute. Oh, and the school's football captain, Cappy, played rather unconvincingly by a miscast Charlie Sheen. He's also Lucas's buddy. But when a new girl moves into town, Carrie Green's Maggie, young Lucas attempts to build a relationship with her before she naturally turns to the more popular portion of the students. And a more, as Lucas says, superficial way of life. Which, of course, does happen, as Maggie and Cappy eventually do wind up together, to Lucas's dismay.
Are you interested in being kissed?
It's about falling in love
Yes.
for the first time. Lucas, rated PG-13.
The irony here being that, like, the very elements in life that Lucas seems to detest, the superficial, the typical, etc., are the very things he uses to attempt to sway Maggie into his little world. A strange little world where only Lucas exists.
For my parents, completely caught in the system. Parties and social status.
That's bad.
Superficial.
That's terrible.
See, that's what I mean about football players and cheerleaders. It's all superficial.
Absolutely.
See? I like the way you're thinking now.
And why not? I mean, even though Lucas may be a little odd, he's still on the level with Maggie status-wise, right? I mean, look at his house. But yeah, that's not really his house. We find out in the third act that Lucas is, like, really poor, and he's basically trying to impress Maggie by pretending that he has some sort of status, some superficial status, if you will. Yet another desperate act from Lucas that is actually pretty damn manipulating, but I mean, we can all relate with that on some level, right? Lucas, he's not perfect. Not by a long shot. And he really doesn't do himself any favors, You can kind of see him being this annoying little tag-along shit that just won't go away. Like, we all knew that kid in school, right? But we still relate to Lucas, which says a lot, as we don't really relate to the sorry-ass football team here, which features a very, very young Jeremy Piven, again, in his feature film debut.
Huge, man, it was huge. Help me, help me, help me, help me.
It was these elements that drew me to the film early on, and not the theme of falling in love for the first time, as it says on the poster. I see this as more of a character study, like a teen movie about love, as truly seen through the eyes of a loner, weirdo, normal kid. There are some moments of levity, though, a few of which are really out of place, if I'm being totally honest. But overall, it plays out as an overall somber movie, like more of a drama than a comedy. And I say that is a good thing. There is a place for overly sad or somber drenched films, and there always will be. There's just a raw beauty attainable in that genre that has proven to be unparalleled in its scope, as well as being street tested for longevity. One doesn't have to look far to see a completely different take on the teen film, on the oddball teen, nerd film, if you will. So, Lucas really does stand out. Throughout the film, we learn about the lifespan and the purpose of the Locust, and see a similar emergence play out with Lucas himself. We can see him come to life, so to speak. It was a real shocker for me when I first saw this flick in the third act twist, when we learn of Lucas's extreme poverty, and his alcoholic parents and bad overall home life. It's an element you don't see coming on your first viewing, as by this point, we understand Lucas on a visceral level. To demonstrate my point here, let's go to one of my favorite scenes in the movie, where Lucas takes Maggie to this kind of high-class orchestra. The tickets must have been in triple digits, and this is in 1986. But they listen and watch underground from a storm drain. And instead of being grossed out or creeped out by this, Maggie buys into this little wild world of Lucas and sees the same beauty he does in the magic of the music, regardless of status, or in this case, actual seats to the orchestra. So it becomes a real downer when we see Maggie eventually be swayed over to the cheerleading and popular crew of the school, where she immediately manages to gain enemies and break up a long-time relationship between Cappy and his cheerleader girlfriend Elise, played by a very young Courtney Thorne-Smith, again in her feature film debut. But the real sadness of the film, in my opinion, comes from the unabashed look at teen life. It's just such a beautiful script, and in turn, a beautiful movie, of course, that I'm so amazed actually got made the way that it got made. I mean, this was an era of teen sex comedy schlock that, while trying to emulate better outings in the genre, were generally pretty bad anyways, And with major studio behind this, 20th Century Fox, it's nearly a godsend that it wasn't tampered with or lampooned once it was shot. And it seems the filmmakers really were able to make the film they wanted to. But all the pieces had to be just right.
It's called the process of natural selection.
Suicide. He's gone out for the football team.
Director David Seltzer got his start with National Geographic, where he worked firsthand with Jacques Cousteau, then wound up working in game shows before cutting his teeth in the writer's room with some TV work, until he was tasked with creating an original take, basically, of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, after creator Roald Dahl infamously disowned anything to do with the production. And maybe I'm looking too deep into it here, let me know. But I think it's ironic how Seltzer got going with another script about an impoverished yet special young boy. Anyway, this led to him working with Richard Donner on The Omen, where David Seltzer wrote the screenplay and eventually the novel. But all the while, it seemed David Seltzer had a passion project, something very personal and autobiographical that he wanted to do. With the casting of the title character, many young actors auditioned, and many were considered, one of them ironically being another Corey. And with the release of Goonies the previous year, Richard Donner, well, it seemed working together on The Omen had its benefits, as Goonies alum Corey Feldman was heavily considered for the role. And I'm sure he was pushed by Donner, because Donner and Feldog were homeboys. Rest in peace, Richard Donner. And of course, Carrie Green, who became something of an obsession for certain 80s boys. I certainly fell in love with her when I saw Lucas. But again, it makes sense why and how she was involved. Goonies. However, as great of an actor as Corey Feldman was becoming at this time, it was equal parts him deciding to play Teddy Duchamp in Stand By Me, and David Seltzer seeing something in another actor, a young Canadian kid also named Corey, that while having a few roles, impressed the director to no end by his obvious talent. As for the rest of the cast, all of Lucas's friends and the school staff, they're all pretty believable. Really, some of them may seem a little old, for high school kids, but I think it makes sense seeing as how we're watching this film largely from, the POV of this little scrawny kid in Lucas. Oh, and there's even a cameo from Corey's sister, Carrie. And as I said earlier, I do feel that Charlie Sheen is miscast here, not just to throw any shade his way. Even though I do like his character as Cappy, he cares about Lucas. He's there to protect him, and he's sincere. In fact, that's a great way to describe this film. It's just so sincere and honest, something that Seltzer handles fabulously. And with the script, we get a contrast of ideas, a turning of the page that you never really see coming until it's too late. A somber, brutal, melodramatic yet hilarious film. Some of the most beautiful scenes in the film could have all been played down, and probably would have if the film were in someone else's hands, so you gotta hand it to David Seltzer. Lucas even subverts genre in its third act, if you can believe that, as we towed the line so close to the game-winning football teen ending, Another element I recall being totally out of nowhere whenever we see Lucas ultimately fail instead of winning the big game. And we see ourselves heartbroken when he gets trampled to shit. I'll never forget seeing this for the first time. It's then, while Lucas is incapacitated, that we learn that he's been lying to Maggie and others and is no way okay. He lives in a rundown trailer with alcoholic parents, and we can see how his potential will never be reached, and how he sought out Maggie and could have really benefited by having her around, in his little fantasy life at least. But a huge part of the sadness of Lucas is how the film utilizes positivity in the face of absolution, mainly with what may be my favorite scene in the whole movie. Maggie visits Lucas in the hospital.
They're all gone, the locusts. I was just outside. They aren't making any noise anymore. Not for 17 years. Wonder if we'll still know each other. I don't know. I hope so. Oh, me too.
Now, that feels like a proper ending to the film, and I think it should have been. Something about seeing Lucas in this state feels like there's just so much more for him to see, so much more potential. It's almost positive, kind of like a fresh start or something. I don't know. If this were the final image we saw, I just feel like, he's going to recover and take over the damn world. And this would seem to play with the themes of the film when you think about it. But this isn't the end of the film. Instead, Lucas recoups. And when the film's nearly over, he returns to school, unafraid of what people may think or what he may find, albeit, he's pretty obviously nervous. What plays out is a little strange, and I've always felt it didn't really work. Now, it makes sense why the film's ending feels like this, a little off. Because Lucas's hair is a little different, the set design's just a little off kilter, and that's because 6 months after the film wrapped, it was decided that the studio wanted to change the sad ending to a more upbeat one. And while I did love the ending we got, it did introduce the world to the slow clap. And while we get that shot of the overjoyed Lucas, they give him his Letterman. It's inspiring, I don't know. It's also a pretty sad image in my eyes. I mean, look at this. We'll come back to this in a second. David Seltzer talked about how when filming, Corey Haim was endlessly professional. He knew all of his lines and was blown away by Corey's talent daily. However, many reports were also made that Haim was a handful on set, when not filming at least. And, everyone's hard work proved to be worth it because the film was a hit critically and financially. It did pretty well, especially on VHS and cable. Roger Ebert gave the film extremely high praise. He stated, "It's a film about teenagers who are learning to be good to each other, learning to care, and not simply be filled with egotism, lust, and selfishness, which is all most Hollywood movies think teenagers can experience. Lucas is one of the year's best films, and although its 3 stars are all teenagers, I doubt if anyone of any age will give more sensitive and effective performances this year." Damn, that's good shit right there. He even had nice things to say about Corey Haim. He said, "Corey Haim as Lucas does not give one of those cute little boy performances that gets on your nerves. He creates one of the most three-dimensional, complicated, interesting characters of any age in any recent movie. If he can continue to act this well, he will never become a half-forgotten child star, but will continue to grow into an important actor. He's that good." Roger Ebert couldn't have said it better, my man. The years following would all be extremely productive for the young cast's careers. For the most part, Corey Haim will land a TV role in the show Roomies, a short-lived yet pretty good little sitcom. He would work with Robin Lively here for the first time, and later again in Dream a Little Dream 2. My review for that coming out soon. And after, after was basically To Corey's Mania, Lost Boys, whatnot. Charlie Sheen, though, would of course go on to massive success. In 1986 alone, he did films like Lucas, The Wraith, a personal favorite of mine, Ferris Bueller, and The Amazing Platoon. And while I can't in good conscience call myself a Charlie Sheen fan anymore, he's in more than a handful of my favorite movies. Charlie Sheen would appear with Cary Green once again in the flop 3 for the Road. And Cary Green's career wouldn't really take off after, mainly doing TV and, some adult-themed cable romps, if you will. However, she would direct the very first film released from Asylum Pictures, Belly Fruit. Lucas was, of course, parodied famously in Not Another Teen Movie, which, while I appreciate the references, Lucas wasn't just another teen movie, goddammit. But, with things like the slow clap and, the fake, hamster getting trampled and whatnot, I don't know, man. At least they made the most of it, right?
Marty!
And essentially, everybody involved from the cast to the crew has stated Lucas was their favorite time working in the business in general. Like, they all said this is their favorite movie of theirs that they ever got to be part of, which is just really cool to hear, man. Winona Ryder stated multiple times publicly how Lucas is among her favorite own films, along with Beetlejuice, of course, and how much she learned on set. This is Carrie Haim's favorite movie of her brothers, and has gone down as director David Seltzer's career-defining work. By now, you should get a pretty good picture on why the overall sadness of Lucas was built into its structure. With the heavy themes of, survival of the fittest and rejection, all aimed directly at a young audience, giving them a real and unabashed take on young adulthood, that has aged far better than any of its contemporaries. Although, there were some hyper-realistic, albeit nihilistic takes of this genre around this time. Films that leaned more into the R-rated adult stuff to achieve what Lucas ultimately did as well. Which really sets Lucas apart. Again, I know I keep saying that, but this movie stands on its own. The feelings and the emotions they're able to bring to the screen in a teen romance comedy without using shock elements, it's just so amazing. But to me, the reason I wanted to make this video was to get to the real root of the sadness of Lucas. Something I think can be pinpointed in this shot right here. Everything's good, right? This ending the movie, everything's going to work out just fine for Lucas, right? The upbeat reshot ending, in my opinion, had unwarranted repercussions. I mean, this is it for Lucas. The film managed to relay how truthful and honest young adults can be, and that goes both ways. Surely before year's end, Lucas would have outstayed his welcome, so to speak. Maggie and Cappy surely would go on with their relationship, and even if it didn't work, I mean, you think Maggie's gonna get with Lucas? No, she's not. Lucas is still basically a pariah here. Not like he's gonna stay on the football team or anything. And soon Maggie and Cappy will be graduating and leaving Lucas behind, where, you know, we can only hope that he hooks up with Rena. Maybe they go to college. He becomes an etymologist. Who knows? Who knows? Maybe he and Rena have some kids, or maybe Lucas just stays alone for the rest of his life and becomes a landscaper. I mean, the immediate years following the film were surely a time of turmoil for Lucas. This is such a confusing age, and I'm just being realistic here. He is still going to go home to squalor. He's still going to be a hopeless loner, and the novelty of his position here would surely quickly dissipate. I can see Maggie avoiding him in the halls, you know, walking the other way, taking a different route, making up excuses as to not hang out with them until they pass each other like ghosts. I don't mean to bum you out, guys, you know. Lucas will always be a very special film to me. Did I say top 5? I'll put it in my top 3. And I feel that films try too hard or not hard enough these days. Lucas really is one of a kind. And I, for one, hope it sees a resurgence at some point, gets a nice Blu-ray re-release or something. There's a little bit of Lucas in all of us. That being said, here's a word from my good friend Garrett over at Born to Be Rad. Subscribe.
What's up, everybody? Garrett back here from Born to Be Rad, and I want to give you my thoughts on Lucas. Lucas is an early Corey Haim movie, man. This is one of his first movies, his first big lead role, and I absolutely love it. It's ever since the first time I saw it. All-star cast, really great flick, man. Such a coming-of-age story. It's hard to get through this one without a couple tears going down because it's just a real feel-good story. It's sad but feel good, and I've loved this so much that when I was starting my collection and having things displayed in my house, one of the things I ended up picking up that is still displayed to this day is I have an official red carpet ticket to the premiere of Lucas when it first came out. So I thought this was a real cool item. It's pretty cool that it was like a nice big ticket like this, 1986. So I figured I would showcase that here for Staunch's awesome Corey Christmas series. So guys, that's my thoughts on Lucas. Definitely recommend. It's one of my favorite Corey Haim movies. So hopefully you guys check it out after watching this video. And like always, stay rad.
Thanks, buddy. Everyone go subscribe. We recently did a full deep dive into Corey Feldman's full career. You don't want to miss that one. Please like and subscribe to Staunch TV. Leave me a comment down there about this amazing film. Let me know what you think about Lucas. Did I get anything wrong? Just let me know. Let's get a dialogue going down there. Rest in peace, Corey. We sure do miss you, buddy. Please check out the rest of the channel. Plenty of obscure movie reviews and hot takes, a lot of music stuff. Jump into my head for a bit, why don't you? Also, check out the rest of the Sadness Of series, where I cover films like Radio Flyer and The War. Weird, those are both Elijah Wood movies. Let me know what I should cover next, guys. What are your favorite somber or sad films? Love ya, guys. Be nice to bugs.